Vermont State Parks Accounting. Let's jump right in and start with some of the basics. What is expected from you? The biggest thing for me is to maintain open lines of communication. If you have a discrepancy or variance in your accounting or something just seems off, I'm here to help and I would encourage you to reach out to me. I may also at times reach out to you to follow up with questions if you've sent in some backup or notes that aren't entirely clear. I really believe that maintaining these open lines of communication will help things to flow a lot more smoothly throughout the season for everyone. It is expected that you adhere to the best practices provided in this presentation. Accounting documents should be scanned into the business office at a minimum of weekly, but if possible, more frequently would be preferred. If for some reason you have accounting documents that need to be scanned up, but for some reason they are going to experience a significant delay, just give me a heads up that your scanner is down or things are going to be delayed for any other reason. Along the same lines, it's expected that deposits are made at least once per week, and if you reach the deposit threshold, which we'll get into in a few minutes, we expect that multiple deposits will be made. Lastly, it's also expected that financial sessions are to be closed at the end of every day at a minimum. Best practices for financial sessions and PINs. You should always use your own login for Aspira. Never share your login with anyone. This is going to include logging out of your session at the end of your shift or when you step away from the computer. This also extends to PINs. Our park reservation software tracks transactions through your login and your PINs. In some cases, one or the other, in some cases, both. It's really important that you're only using your own login and PIN because if for some reason your supervisor or myself had questions on a particular line item transaction, we may reach out to you to get more information. If someone else was using your PIN or your login, you may not be able to help us. Notes are required for certain actions in Aspira. This may include closing a financial session, making a deposit, prepping a deposit, adjusting fees in your cart, among other things. Anytime that you put a note in, we require you to put your initials in that note. This helps us keep track of who's doing what within the system. Financial sessions, as I already mentioned, should be closed at the end of every day at a minimum. Some parks may find it necessary to close financial sessions multiple times throughout the day. That may be at every shift change, or it may be in the mid-afternoon when you have a slight lull, if that happens at your park. If you're unsure if multiple financial sessions would be appropriate for you and your park, just ask. Your supervisors and we're all here to help. Best practices for transactions. Every transaction needs to be entered into Aspira. This is the case for sales, donations, coupons or gift certificates, refunds that are processed, shower money, pretty much anything you can think of is a transaction that needs to be entered into Aspira. Because this is how we determine activity at the park as well as visitation, this is really important. Every customer should get a receipt. A receipt is going to let the guest know that their transaction has been processed appropriately and accurately, and it can also protect you from any accusations such as you gave me the wrong change or something along those lines. Bear in mind that not every customer is going to want a copy of their receipt. In some cases, if someone declines, it's perfectly acceptable to go along with that. However, offering is doing your due diligence. We certainly don't expect anyone to go to a campsite and tape a receipt to the door of someone's tent or to stick it under their wiper blade after they park their car. Checks should only be taken for the amount of sale of a transaction. There is never going to be an exception to this. If for some reason someone wishes to write a check for more than their purchase and receive change back, we can't do that, and the answer is simply, unfortunately, no. Canadian cash is not an acceptable form of payment. This is really important to keep in mind. If for some reason you have a customer that has questions or concerns about this policy, please reach out to your supervisor or to myself. Best practices for processing refunds and voiding transactions. Aspira will automatically process credit card refunds back to the original card that was used for the transaction. If the customer used a gift card or gift certificate, their refund is going to go back to that gift card or gift certificate. Any payments that were received via check that need to be refunded can be processed as a gift certificate, or the customer can choose to have a check mailed to them. Cash payments are to be refunded by gift certificate or mailed check. To give a refund in cash is really an extremely rare occurrence. They should only be processed for same-day purchases. There aren't going to be any exceptions to that. And if there is a rare occurrence or rare need to process a cash refund, the maximum transaction limit for those refunds is $30. We do ask that any cash refunds you process are accompanied by a note. Voids are also going to be rare occurrences and should only be used as a last resort when a reservation cannot be canceled. Notes with initials are required for this as well. Best practices for deposits. I want to start off by saying night deposits are an option for everyone. In most cases, night deposits have already been set up for you at your primary banking location. If you do have any questions or need any information on that, please feel free to reach out. Deposits should only be created in Aspira the same day that you are physically going to the bank. This is the case for both night deposits as well as deposits being made during regular banking hours. This is really important because it helps us to reconcile park activity with our bank activity. It also helps us identify any variances that may occur. Deposits should be made weekly at a minimum, and if you reach the deposit threshold, we expect deposits to be made more frequently. So, what is this deposit threshold? Let's dive a little deeper. What is it? Why do we have it? Our deposit threshold is $1,000. What this basically means is that any time you reach $1,000 in cash and checks at your contact station, we expect that a deposit will be made. as soon as is practical. Ideally, it would be the same day. However, it is understood that at times this threshold may be reached at the end of the day or on a weekend or bank holiday when banks are closed. There may also be times when the park is extremely busy and taking the time to do a bank run really isn't possible. I do know for a fact that some parks will hit $1,000 multiple times during the day, and we certainly don't expect you to do multiple bank runs within the day. We simply ask that you go as soon as you can. So the purpose of this threshold is really to protect you and to protect Vermont State Parks. It protects against theft and can also reduce the risk of loss. It also makes it a lot easier to locate any source of discrepancies or errors either in the accounting system or in the bank. Prepping and making deposits. So when you complete your deposit ticket for the bank, the date that you're going to put on your deposit slip is the date the deposit was actually taken to the bank. This date should also match the date the deposit was created in Aspira. You want to make sure that these are completed legibly, and you also want to make sure that you are itemizing checks and putting the total of cash, not just putting one grand total on the lower half of the deposit ticket. Most of you will have deposit books that have duplicated deposit slips. Some of you may have triplicate, and that's okay. We're only going to deal with the first top two. The top copy, which is usually white, is going to go to the bank with your deposit. The second copy, which may be yellow or pink, is going to need to be validated and scanned to the business office. In some cases, instead of validating the deposit ticket itself, some banks will provide a separate validation receipt. And you can see here an example of a deposit ticket that has been filled out. On the top right-hand corner is what the back of a validated deposit ticket will look like. And on the lower right-hand side, you will see what a validation receipt looks like. This validation simply contains the date, the time, and the amount of the deposit. So what happens if the bank teller indicates a different amount than you counted when you were filling out your deposit ticket? Well, there are a few things that you can do. It's possible and is most likely that some money, change, or cash may have been left in the contact station. In that case, you can simply go back to the park and take a look in the contact station. Maybe you had an extra $20 under the drawer or something to that effect. Additionally, if the bank teller indicates a different amount than you had added up, look at what you've got included in your deposit ticket. Did you accidentally take some Canadian cash from a customer without realizing it? Or maybe one of your attendants did, and that has been included in your deposit. If you can't quite figure it out, no worries, just feel free to reach out and let me know that you have a variance that you're aware of, and we can look into it together. So far we've covered cash and checks and bankable activity, but I also want to touch on non-bankable transactions and accountability for non-bankables. Non-bankables is going to include things such as coupons, fee adjustments or waivers, park prescriptions, gift certificates, etc. All non-bankable transactions require some sort of substantiation. Anytime a coupon, prescription, fee waiver, alteration of fees is processed, some sort of backup is required. In some cases, like the coupons or park prescriptions, you will have a physical coupon that you can scan to the business office, but in some cases, when that substantiation isn't available, you will be expected to send a note. The Parks accounting email is listed here on this slide and will also be listed at the end when we talk about scanning in all of your accounting documentation. We're going to take a look at a few examples of non-bankable accountability. The first example here is a coupon. This coupon entitles one person to free day use entry at any Vermont State Park. When you receive a coupon, the very first thing you should do is write void on it. You can see that the attendant or park manager who accepted this coupon did do that in the upper right-hand corner. In addition to writing void on the coupon, you should also include your park name, your initials, and the value of the coupon. In this case, you can see that the individual who accepted it wrote their initials, their park name, the date, and, as we already mentioned, the word void. Now, this person did not write the value on the coupon, and I just want to reinforce that it is really important for us to know the value of this coupon, because just looking at this particular example, it isn't clear whether this coupon has been used for child day use entry or an adult day use entry. Perhaps a family showed up and they had two of these coupons, and one of them was used for a child and one was used for an adult. The value is really important for us to be able to distinguish what type of entry this was used for. The next non-bankable that we're going to look at are park prescriptions. It's important to note that one park prescription admits only one individual. There are never any exceptions to this. Some people in the past have brought a park prescription and attempted to use it to admit their whole family. Each member of a family needs to have their own park prescriptions in order to have day use fees waived. You'll see here that on the Vermont Parks prescription, there is a spot for a patient's name, age, the doctor's signature, and the date. You'll also see in the lower right-hand corner, there are expiration dates on these park prescriptions. Now, we will accept a park prescription regardless of it being filled out completely, or in some cases not at all. It really would be ideal for everyone to have a park prescription that matches the one that you see on the right-hand side, where you have the patient's name as Awesome Park Guest, the age is 28, and the doctor has signed and dated it. You'll also see on that park prescription that it is labeled along the left-hand side with Sandbar, $8.29, $4. So just as you did with the coupons, you're going to want to write your park name, the date it was used, as well as the value. You'll also see an example on the bottom where a doctor just gave out the park prescription with no signature. We will accept that for admission, but it's really not ideal. And then on the left-hand side is a park prescription where the doctor has signed and dated it, but there's no patient name or age. In this case, the park manager did write Sandbar. They included the date of 9/7 and also provided the value. Including the value becomes more critical when there's no age listed because, again, we want to make sure that we are tracking attendance and coupons and prescriptions accurately and appropriately. The last type of non-bankable that we're going to cover in this presentation is waiving or adjusting fees for camping and day use. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a letter from the Commissioner of the Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation. This letter entitles the FPR staff who has it and up to 7 other passengers in their vehicle to enjoy free day use entry to any Vermont State Park during the season. The employee should fill out the bottom half where it says name of employee, date of admittance, number of people, and the park. And then it's the responsibility of the attendant or park manager accepting the letter to sign it at the bottom. For this type of day use waiver of fees, you're going to process it essentially the same way as you would a coupon. The important thing to note here is that the bottom half does need to be filled out. If an employee presents you with this letter and they have not filled out that bottom portion, then you can go ahead and just fill out the date of admittance, number of people, park, and you can sign it. It's also important to note void as well as the total value of the admission. In this example, there were 3 people admitted and the total value was $7. That's critical, as we've mentioned in previous slides, because we want to be sure that we have accountability and accuracy in our reconciliations. Those 3 people may have been 3 adults, 2 adults, 1 child, 1 adult, 2 children, and again, it's just really important to maintain that accountability. On the left-hand side of your screen is what we refer to as an employee letter. This is essentially a letter that will waive camping fees on a space available basis for employees or volunteers at Vermont State Parks. There may also be other types of letters or formats of letters that you see, but this is likely to be the primary type of employee letter you will see. These employee letters, because it is a space available basis, you'll go ahead and start making the reservation assuming you have the space. Once you make the reservation, when you get to the cart screen, you will go ahead and apply a promo code that will waive 100% of the camping fees. In the event that the employee or volunteer who is camping also wishes to purchase firewood, ice, or some type of concession item, it's worth noting that this letter only waives the camping fees, and that employee or volunteer is still responsible for the cost of any firewood, ice, concessions, etc. that they may desire to purchase. When you get this letter, it should already have the employee's or volunteer's name, the park that they're from, the dates they'd like to camp at your park, and the signature of their park manager. You'll also want to include the value of the camping stay, your initials, and the word void. Once you have these letters and you've written void and made sure that they're filled out to the best of your ability, you can go ahead and scan them up to the business office with your other accounting documentation. There may be times when you need to waive fees or process fee adjustments, and you won't necessarily have a fee waiver letter or adjustment letter to include when you send your non-bankable substantiation up to the business office. In these cases, you can simply include a note. On this slide, you'll see that the park manager has printed out a copy of the receipt and indicated that these fee waivers were for the state trail crew. A promo code was used to waive 100% of fees, and this park manager has also included the name of the trail crew member, the value that was waived, the date it was used, as well as her initials and her park code. This is fantastic and is exactly what we're looking for. In a lot of cases, you will see trail crew members may only have an email from the region or from the state parks director, and in those cases, it's perfectly fine to just include a note as you see here. Any other adjustment of fees, for example, a customer service courtesy where you have adjusted fees to 0 to give them an armload of wood, for example, those should really be a rare occurrence. And when those do happen, I would expect something similar where you're including the receipt and an explanation of why you adjusted those fees. If you have any questions about making fee adjustments or fee waivers, or you're just not quite sure how to do that in Aspira, please reach out to me or to your supervisor, and we are happy to walk you through that. Your last step is going to be to email any validated deposit slips as well as any non-bankable backup, that's those coupons or letters that we wrote void on, to the Parks Accounting email. You'll also want to include any notes, comments, or questions that you may have. If you have further questions on anything covered in this presentation, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much.